Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song. We'll all be flying higher than a jetliner. And if you want a little bang in your yin-yang, come along.
Come on along and welcome aboard. Indiana Sports Beat, of course, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Thursday. It is 13th of August. And, man, still plenty to talk about as, of course, the no sports edict went out a few days ago, but IU is looking for an assistant basketball coach, got a new coach up, high school coach up in Indianapolis. Lots to get to, some recruiting tidbits as well. Bryce Hopkins has become a focal point for IU recruiting, but he's a nice big wing, Todd Leary, and they've got their eyes on a couple already in Trey Kaufman and Mason Miller. I think that you may get two of those if you're lucky. You're not going to get all three of those guys.
Hopkins, isn't Hopkins a this coming year player, or is he still going to be
all three of them? All three of those guys are 2021.
Oh, they are? Okay. Well, I mean, you know, there was some interesting ways to look at that. You know, when you think about, you know, the Bryce Hopkins, I think he have a real close attachment to Blake Wesley. And you look at that combo versus, you know, would you got to take the bird in the hand. Like, I think that's the case. That's obviously the case in this scenario and recruiting in general. But, you know, if you do you pass on Trey Kaufman if you get Hopkins and
I can answer that question before you even finish. No, on no uncertain terms.
Well, let me just ask you. Let me just ask it this way then. And I'm not saying this is the case, but if you could sign right away, if you could sign Hopkins and Blake Wesley, would you do that prior to having a commitment from Trey Kaufman? Because that probably eliminates Trey Kaufman. Maybe not. I don't know.
It's a good question because, again, like I said, I think you can get two of those guys. I think that getting two of them is not going to hurt anything. You don't want – obviously, players don't want to feel like that they're being recruited over in any way. I don't think that's the case there because that particular position is one that is in need, always in need on this team, it seems like. So it's always in flux.
I don't know this for a fact. I'm going off of what I read, which I know is dangerous to do. But I read that Bryce Hopkins and Blake Wesley have a serious tie and have talked publicly about wanting to play together.
Maybe so.
And so, yeah, that's the only reason I'm saying that. I mean, otherwise, you know, right now, if you could take either one, Hopkins or Trey Kaufman, which one would you take?
Trey Kaufman 1,000 times over for so many different reasons. It's in-state recruiting ramifications. Just you've put way too much into that, the relationship. So no doubt you don't turn your back on something that you've been working on, especially if you feel like
I agree with that.
Like you've got that relationship where you want it to be. You have to have faith in it.
I agree with you don't turn your back on it. I'm definitely not saying that. I'm just saying right now, if you're comparing apples and apples and you got both players and you can only have one of them, you know,
Trey Kaufman.
You take Trey Kaufman.
Just again because there's other things that he brings besides on the court. So I think for that alone, you do that. But
raises the team GPA significantly.
Well, they definitely will do that, man, for sure.
Indiana basketball. One of the things I like about Trey Kaufman is we've seen how hard he's worked in the last year to improve his game. I mean, you even said, you know, and you watching him play, you know, a couple of weekends ago versus what we saw last November. He's improved a ton. So obviously his work ethic is there.
Absolutely. And we'll see how I'm surprised that one of these guys hasn't committed, to be honest with you, whether it's Mason Miller, not Trey Kaufman, because he's shown that he's going to take his time to the very end. But Mason Miller, guys like that, because his dad left Memphis, that eliminates them. I would think he'd kind of want to get this over with. But obviously not.
Well, I mean, like I hope this isn't politically incorrect in saying this, but I mean, I think it's fairly important for Indiana to have a black assistant on the coaching staff, and so I would assume they would replace Bruiser Flint with a black assistant, and And if you say that, then that obviously eliminates Mike Miller. But one of the things, if you really go back and analyze what Mike Miller could bring to the staff, I mean, what was this team's biggest weakness offensively last year? Shooting the ball.
Shooting.
Mike Miller was a great shooter, obviously. His son is Mason's a good shooter and probably going to be a great shooter. But, you know, I think there's some real things that he can bring. I don't think – I'm firm in saying this. I don't believe you hire Mike Miller just so that you get Mason Miller. I don't think that's the case. But I don't think they would be. I think he would bring some other things to the table that this team could really use.
Absolutely. And then there's also the search for an assistant coach that we've mentioned. I think that's kind of been whittled down. Where I'm hearing one
in-house, it sounds like.
Yeah. And also I'm only hearing one name really. And actually Tim sent it in yesterday early before I started hearing it anywhere else. But the Griffin dude out of that's at Syracuse, and I think Archie used to work together with at Dayton, I think.
Yeah, he did. He hired him at Dayton, actually. And, you know, that's a situation you just – like we don't know the ins and outs of that. You know, it's very similar to why Bruiser left here and went where his comfort blanket is in John Calipari. And, you know, if Archie is that for Coach Griffin, then, you know, there's a strong possibility he would do that. I don't know his background. I don't know if he's from New York or the East Coast area or how close he's tied into Syracuse. I don't know. I know Jim Boeheim has always been talked about being a great coach to work under. His coaches get jobs. So there's just a lot of layers to it that we obviously won't know about, or we'll probably never know about.
Also, there's a hierarchy to the assistant coaches. It's 1, 2, and 3, and
sure.
and those spots are 1, 2, and 3. Don't make any mistake about that. Bruiser Flint was in the number 2 spot, basically, right off of Tom Ostrom, who's the associate head coach. I would assume. I have to go back and look at the experience he's got, but if this is for the number 2 spot, that would make a difference if he's currently in the number 3 spot at Syracuse.
Yeah, I mean, he's, you know, I think Tom Ostrom even has a title change. I think he's associate head coach, so that spot's not changing. Nobody's coming in here as the number 1 assistant. But on the flip side of that, I also don't think that those guys care all that much about that. Now, I'm saying like the Tom Ostroms of the world, the Dane Fifes of the world. I think they know what their roles are within the, within the staff's, responsibilities and what they need to do. And, I think Tom Ostrom's biggest strong suit is he's a good recruiter. He develops good relationships. And so, I don't know. It's an interesting situation because, we talked about this a couple of days ago. As soon as it broke, we were on the air and the information broke about Bruiser going to Kentucky. The first thought that goes through my head as a fan, not as an analyst, not as a former player, as whatever. My first thought as a fan is what former player could come in there? What Bob Knight era player could come in there? And kind of get things a little bit back to the way they were before and all that. And, man, after I sit back and, I think there's some guys that could do great. I think Jamal Meeks, there's some things that Jamal could bring that would be great. There's some things that A.J. Guyton could bring that would be good. I think Calbert could definitely, help in some areas. Do I think that it's the wrong decision if they hire someone that's not a former player? Absolutely not. I don't. Whoever Archie's the most comfortable with, that staff, like I said, has responsibilities they have to accomplish. And they've done a great job recruiting under Tom Ostrom, and Archie have been instrumental in that. I don't know how big Bruiser was from a recruiting standpoint. I don't know how instrumental he was in some of the guys they've landed, but I know Tom Ostrom is big time in that.
Well, yeah, he's been with Archie for quite some time, and that's another thing about who Archie's going to bring in. And, why, if any Hoosier fans are wondering about the IU connection thing again, he's already got that with Mike Roberts. He wants people that he is comfortable with, that he trusts, that is familiar with him, and that makes this a lot more seamless, the change. And that's what he wants. And he wants to build his staff with his people. That's how all coaches are, and it's completely understandable. And that's why that there's no way that this will be a position, or if this position will be filled with an IU connection, unless that just happened to match up with some other things. But he's going to bring in what he thinks is going to make his staff the best it can be.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I as a former player, I'll take my fan hat off for a minute, and I'll say, as a former player, there's a part of me that would love to have, somebody back in there that was, from the old school and kind of could instill some of the old, the old way things were a long time ago. But on the flip side of it, I also don't mind it not being that way. I want Archie to have, I like them having a new identity and I like the new regime. I like the way that they, Archie's just no nonsense, 100% basketball. And I like that side of it. So I don't mind it not being a former player, but I'm the first one to admit, Jim, we were on the air when it broke. Like, I'm the first one that said Calbert Chaney, Jamal Mee. I'm the first one that started rattling off former players, because that's where my mind went immediately. But after thinking about it, yeah, it's not a bad decision if they definitely don't hire a former player.
Yeah, and they won't. I mean, like I said, it's going to be what Archie thinks is best for his staff, and having someone that he previously hired means that he already has confidence in him the first time. So, and if he's going after him a second time, to me, that's almost a no doubter, unless that were to fall apart. And I think it's good. I hear a lot of good things about him. Good recruiter, a good person, and so it's not so much concern this time around. I think everybody was just really all last time before they hired Mike Roberts. Everybody was all up in a bother about having an IU guy on the staff. And again, I always say, everybody's praising Archie and his recruiting. Then why the hell do you need somebody with an IU connection on the staff? What's the point? So you can look at it and live old time memories. Other than that, what's it do? It doesn't do anything. It would be nice if it worked out that way. It would be great, of course, if we could look down that bench and see AJ Guyton or see Calbert Chaney. But it doesn't always work out that way, man. This life is how it is.
Yeah, and you know what? It's more, that would be more for us, I think, than it would be. I definitely see that there are some benefits to having a former player. If you've got someone that bleeds, IU red, which the majority of us that played there forever, I mean, we love the university. I may criticize things they do. I may criticize whatever. At the end of the day, when the game's on, I turn it on and I'm throwing stuff at the TV the same way everybody else does. So, I'm a fan, probably first and foremost. But I mean, there's a side of me that I think we just get comfortable with the way things were. And like I think there is a part of me that wants something to be the way that it used to be. Not exactly the way that it used to be, because the way that it used to be was totally dysfunctional. But
they'd sure like to have some winning like it used to be. There's no doubt about that.
And here's what I'll tell you. This is one thing that I can speak to. The guys I played with were all good guys. There wasn't any. Greg Graham was selfish. Pat Graham was kind of selfish. But they were great guys. They were great teammates. They're fun to be around. Like, we all enjoy being around each other. And I can't say that this team has been that way. But what I will say about Archie Miller and the way this team is, you don't need a former player as an assistant, because he's recruited kids that want to play together. They're good people. They're good kids. They look like they have fun when they play. And that's the team I want to root for. So they don't need a former player to come in there to sell Indiana University, because Archie Miller has sold Indiana University with the right kind of kids that we want to root for.
Jason Gardner, a name from the past, of course, named North Central High School's basketball coach. I saw that yesterday. It's kind of cool to see names like that come back and be involved in Indiana high school basketball. He's a good one.
Yeah, what an incredible just a high school player, and then went on to Arizona and play. That was a miss for not just Indiana University, but the state of Indiana in general.
How does that happen?
I don't know. That's in my exact scenario of kids can have some tie to some coach or some school that we don't know anything about. Trey Kaufman could be a perfect example of that. I told you about my relationship with Roy Williams. Like, I fell in love with Kansas because of Roy Williams. And honestly, if they'd ever offered me, I would have gone there prior to my Indiana offer, obviously. But they would have been the best offer I had. And if my choices were Minnesota or Kansas, I would have for sure gone to Kansas. but that's because of that relationship. And that's, he obviously had some, hopefully we'll have him on next week and we can ask him how that situation took place.
We've got a lot more to get to. The D1 Council for NCAA D1 Council recommend that everybody gets to keep their eligibility. But getting back to the Big Ten, man, Kevin Brockway is going to join us. But did Commissioner Warren fumble the ball on this? This has been a very, very hotly debated issue, and then I'm talking about the cancellation of fall sports by the Big Ten. Why they didn't go ahead and wait a little bit? Why they didn't let this play out a little bit? And now you're starting to hear things from Ryan Day at Ohio State that basically saying there was no plan. They didn't have a plan in place for traveling testing, and which is mind-boggling, which tells you they never had a plan on this going forward at all. So why the hell were they even playing the charade of practice and all that? But plenty to get to. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat. We're coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, back right after this.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily. Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the golf club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make a tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. This is Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary. Indiana Sports Beat is now a part of the Rivals Network. You can go to thehoosier.com to sign up. It's free. Catch the show there each day live or at your convenience. You can also like or follow us on Facebook, follow the show's rebroadcast anywhere you podcast. If we're not on a radio station where you live, we should be. Let your local station know they need to carry Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary, or simply go to thehoosier.com.
Some of the best sounds you'll ever hear are generic, safe, effective, even money-saving, just like FDA-approved generic drugs. Even if they don't come in the exact same color or shape as their brand name equivalents, they have the same key ingredients and go through a rigorous review process. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today and visit fda.gov/generic drugs. Generics are safe, effective, and can save you money. You'll like the sound of that.
This is former Indiana basketball player Brian Evans, and you're listening to Indiana Sports Beat with Jim Coyle.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Thursday. The Big Ten canceling fall sports this week. And now a lot of people are wondering, we're joined now by Kevin Brockway as well from CNHI Papers. Kevin, how are you doing, brother? We don't have Kevin Brockway. My bad. Producers got to let us know that. Thanks a lot, producer. But anyway,
I can
Kevin Brockway is going to be joining us, I think. Maybe. But anyway, the Big Ten canceling fall sports. they've been the leader in so many things, and I know it was a tough decision, and that's not the issue that people are having with it. It is the fact that there doesn't seem to have been a freaking plan to even gone forward. According to Ryan Day at Ohio State, they weren't given any type of traveling plans or testing plans for the going future, for the traveling and the games and all that, which tells me they had all this time and they had nothing. They were not prepared. I don't think that they thought the football season was going to be a possibility, apparently, but they have been dishonest about their representation about it.
Jim, you just said the word to me that I think sums it up for them is prepared. Like, they were not prepared for releasing. Like, here's where I just think they totally misled people. Is they put out a schedule a week ago, and literally within 7 days of putting out a schedule. So if you put that schedule out and you say there's an asterisk next to this, we're not 100% sure we're going to be able to start on time, but here's the schedule if we can. But no, they put out a schedule. They put dates on it. September the 4th, IU is supposed to kick a football off to Wisconsin. And less than 7 days later, they come out and cancel the fall season. I mean, and say possibly we're going to play in the spring. That tells me right there, not only do they not have a plan, they weren't prepared. They did the stuff on a whim, and that's, for an organization of that size and that magnitude, that is ridiculous.
Well, especially now, if the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12 go forward and are able to successfully play. Hell, I retweeted something yesterday about Floyd Central High School playing, I think this Saturday maybe, at Madison High School. They're playing games. So everybody else is playing games. But here's the deal. They have students on campus because they want that damn money. And that's what this is all about, the money. But if you can have students on campus, you can have students practice, they can do everything except play the actual game? Really? Are you kidding me? $1 billion industry is being held up for one because you don't want them to play the game? I don't understand it. I don't think anybody understands it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing you just can't do is you can't come in and you can't look as disorganized as they do in putting out a schedule without anything tied to it that says, hey, you know what? This is tentative. This is what we're hoping to accomplish. No, they put it out, and that thing, as soon as that thing said September 4th, IU was kicking off at Wisconsin, I mean, that's when I started to believe, okay, it's real. They are really going to start the season. And 7 days later, they just slammed my nose in the door.
Yeah, it's just been
Let's ask the expert. Let's ask one of the experts about it. I mean,
let's see what joined now by Kevin Brockway from CNHI Papers. Kevin, we've been talking about, of course, the Big Ten canceling fall sports, but now there's and that decision is, of course, it's going to be second guessed by people no matter what. But it is really coming under fire right now because they've done such a great job of doing things. I think that they fumbled the ball on this one, and they canceled the season way too soon. They should have let this play out. And you've got some institutions, Nebraska, Ohio State. They are extremely unhappy with how this has played out, and it's been a mess for Kevin Warren, that's for sure.
Yeah, Kevin Warren's whole tenure really has been a tenure of giving bad news, right? You start with the Big Ten tournament, and now you end up with this week. But, I've been writing a lot about the Nebraska situation the last couple of years. Some of my national editors have wanted those stories. And I think Nebraska has an uphill battle to climb if they think that they're going to be able to go rogue, unless they join another conference. But I think Kevin Warren has made it pretty clear that if they try this, they can just kick them out, and the bylaws, as I researched the last couple of days, does give Kevin Warren kind of broad power on that. I think. Yep.
But let me ask you this. If Ohio State and Nebraska says we're playing games, do you think in any crazy world that the Big Ten would kick out Nebraska and Ohio State?
I don't know if they would kick out Ohio State, but it looks like Ohio State's in line based on the latest comments from Gene Smith. It looks like they're going along with it. I think this is Nebraska on its own island right now doing this. But, I really think what happened was over the weekend, I think the myocarditis cases really scared him. I think that's what it was.
There's no doubt to me. You're right.
Even though Warren, won't necessarily admit, the Pac-12 was stronger in that stance. But when you have 5 or 10 cases and you have, worries about cardiac issues, kids sprinting, maybe undetected, I think that was a huge scare, I think.
Yeah, the thing is, this is not new. It's been around, and it's gotten. I think people can get it from the flu. I mean, this seems to be exacerbated under this particular virus, but this is something that's not new. But you have a case right here in Indiana, that Feeney that's dealing with that, and it is a scary thing, and I do understand it. But the question is, they're on campus. They're here. They're in the dorms. They're practicing. The only difference is not having a game, and that's just not making any sense to anybody.
Yeah, and I wonder how you keep the kids motivated. I think that's the big thing. It's like, how do you keep them working in the fall when there's no carrot at the end of the stick, when there's no Saturday football game to look forward to in the fall? And you could tell them, hey, look, we're going to do it in the winter, but that's no guarantee now, not with the way the leadership has portrayed this with the virus being in control. So I think that's going to be – I wouldn't want to be an Indiana football coach telling these kids to go out, work out 20 hours a week without having something to look forward to. That's going to be a really hard coaching job, and that's going to be something that, I would give a ton of credit for the kids to kind of stay motivated through that through the fall. All these Big Ten kids to stay motivated. It's gonna be really tough.
So do either of you guys know? So like, what does the football team do right now? Do they go back into summertime training camp mode? Do they go back into kind of working out on your own, or just working on individual skills? Because obviously they're not having contact.
I don't know that they know right now. I think that's the problem, and that's one of the things that Ryan Day is bringing up, that there was no plan. They don't know what they're going to do now because they didn't know they were going to be in this situation, but yet they weren't prepared to be in this situation.
But now that they know there's no fall football, what do the teams actually do right now? Kevin, do you know?
They get 20 hours a week. That's what I read.
They're back to that schedule.
So they can do that. My point is like, how do you stay internally motivated throughout the fall, going 20 hours a week, knowing that there's not going to be a game on Saturday? I think that's going to be a big issue, I think.
Well, even though that the D1 Council yesterday recommended that the eligibility be extended for opt-outs and for all these COVID athletes, people like Whop Phillier, he was going to be a senior. He is a senior. He's a senior. This is his last year. Yeah, the odds of him staying probably not good. If his goal dream, obviously go to the NFL. The draft.
Michael Penix. I don't think Michael Penix stays another year.
Yeah, I think he does because he's got to get stronger. But under the scenario, I could see that happening. You got to feel for Peyton Ramsey. Peyton Ramsey transfers up to Northwestern, doesn't get to play a game.
I'll give you a name of a couple of other underclassmen because I know Todd mentioned Penix, and I agree with your point, Jim. But Peyton Hendershot, the tight end, I think is another guy. And Caleb Jones, the offensive lineman, is a guy that's been on a lot of radars because of his size. I think he's another guy. So I think Whop, Peyton, and Caleb Jones, I think those are 3 guys that we could see opting out this spring. And the other issue too, and Kirk Ferentz brought this up, is rating rosters. Maybe a team like what are the transfer rules going to look like? And if the SEC plays and the Big 12 plays, that's another huge concern. Now, I mean, the semester at most schools start in 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know if you can get the paperwork done in time, but I know that, coaches from these other conferences will try every opportunity. You can move a kid like a Whop Phillier or a Peyton Hendershot to another school too.
Well, why should realistically, why should they not be allowed? If you had a situation where you lost a coach, they can transfer and be immediately eligible. There's no way that they cannot allow these guys to be immediately eligible if you're playing on a university that's not even playing your sport. I cannot imagine that not being something that they let happen. But it would suck. You're right. Rating the rosters, that would just that would decimate some programs like in Indiana who are in position to make that next step forward. but they need all those pieces. They can't do it without those pieces.
I agree, and I think that will be, something to be determined with regards to the, NCAA leadership. If they put some kind of a block on that player movement, I mean, they could say, well, hey, look, there is going to be, possibly a spring season, and try to give them every incentive they can to stay. Ryan Day also brought up the issue of the spring season itself and wanting to start in early January so that you could get the season done before the NFL draft, and tell people like Justin Fields, who are draft eligible, sell them on the fact of staying for a spring season.
Yeah, Jeff Brom, Purdue's head coach, just came out with a potential spring schedule that starts Saturday, January 16th. So that's when training would start. So, and if there is, and all I've heard is that spring is just, according to Urban Meyer, his response was no chance that happens. You can't ask these guys to play twice in a calendar year. But I'm telling you, these coaches, whatever it takes to have a season, they're going to try to have a season. And with the upheaval that has come from the Big Ten canceling or postponing, I can't see them not doing everything they can to get this done in the spring, especially for Nebraska, Ohio State, Michigan, those teams. I expect them to push this hard. And being the football-linked program, those are the cowbell programs of the league.
Yeah, not only for the coaches, but for the administrators, too, to make money. I think that's the other issue, too. And maybe if you do have a vaccine by the end of the year, you could get fans in that stadium to a capacity where you maybe couldn't have it in the fall. So there could be a silver lining to this down the road. You could try bubble scenarios. I know that's been mentioned, certain dome sites. You have 3 major domes in the Big Ten, including, obviously Lucas Oil up in Indianapolis. You've got Minnesota. You've got Detroit as dome stadiums. I think playing football in January outside is going to be pretty dicey in the Big Ten in terms of, weather.
Well, you can think about Bloomington. When I think about Bloomington winters, it's not a happy thought. But Bloomington is the southernmost program in the Big Ten. So think about Wisconsin and Minnesota being there. Can you imagine playing at Minnesota in February? I can't even imagine the thought of that.
Ice Bowl, baby. That's what it'd be like Lambeau Field in the 1960s.
I don't even like watching it in February.
Be like grumpy old men. I was thinking grumpy old men out there ice fishing.
So you, Jim, you mentioned beginning of, like, this is just Jeff Brom's, proposal out there, but you mentioned it starts like January 12th or whatever. How late does it go? Like, what's the last date that they have on there?
Well, on Saturday,
so as a 10-game season, you got to figure that's going to go till close to April.
I'm going to have to read this completely because, there's too much there for me to guess.
Yeah, I mean, if they go until April, then you got to figure you've got these guys, especially the ones that are planning on being drafted, and you got 6 rounds of draft picks. So you got several hundred players that are expected again to show up in an NFL camp in June. Like I don't see a spring football season, as much as I would love to watch it as much as anyone. If I was a senior that was going to be recruited and drafted in the top 4 rounds, I wouldn't play.
I think this includes next season's schedule. He rolls it over. Next season would be muted as well, but a 10-game schedule that would begin in October. So,
but still, you talk about the seniors or juniors and seniors that are potentially going to be drafted. So they don't have until October. Their NFL season they'd have mini camps that would start in June. So those guys would opt out. They wouldn't play. I wouldn't.
Lots of logistic stuff to get to. Kevin Brockway from CNHI, make sure you check him out. I can't thank you enough, brother, for taking the time to join us. I know you got to get going, so we'll let you do that. But
thanks, Kev,
for stopping by.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it as always.
You bet, buddy. Thank you. Kevin Brockway stopping by to see us. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition is going to join us next. We'll continue this conversation. I think it is going to dominate things for a while because I don't think the Big Ten is just going to let go of playing some football. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios right after this.
everybody. Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat. When I'm not covering the Hoosiers, you can find me at Bubba's 33 in Clarksville, located on the northeast corner of I-65 at Veterans Parkway. Bubba's 33 has hand-tossed pizzas, bold burgers, and ice-cold beer from a select list of local craft brewers. An incredible food selection, all made fresh daily. Whether you're meeting the team for that post-win meal in the family dining area or meeting friends for happy hour to watch the game on one of Bubba's 50 TVs. Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
We all want a winning smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you will get at Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Reynolds Family Dentistry has been serving the dental needs of Hoosier families for over 30 years. Let Doctors Roger and Jay Reynolds take care of your family. Just off of I-65 at 809 South Indiana Avenue in Sellersburg. Call 812-246-3368. That's Reynolds Family Dentistry, 812-246-3368.
Now that warm weather has arrived, it's time to hit the links, and there's no better place than the golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. Voted best golf course by the readers of the Bloomington Herald-Times, the golf club at Eagle Point is under new ownership, has new fairways and bunkers, and it's open to the public. When the round's over, there's cold beer and a full menu at the Eagle Point Pub and Bistro. Call 812-824-1100 to make a tee time. That's 812-824-1100. The golf club at Eagle Point in Bloomington. This is Jim Coyle from Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary. Indiana Sports Beat is now a part of the Rivals Network. You can go to thehoosier.com to sign up. It's free. Catch the show there each day live or at your convenience. You can also like or follow us on Facebook, follow the show's rebroadcast anywhere you podcast. If we're not on a radio station where you live, we should be. Let your local station know they need to carry Indiana Sports Beat with Coyle and Leary, or simply go to thehoosier.com.
Some of the best sounds you'll ever hear are generic, safe, effective, even money-saving, just like FDA-approved generic drugs. Even if they don't come in the exact same color or shape as their brand name equivalents, they have the same key ingredients and go through a rigorous review process. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today and visit fda.gov/generic drugs. Generics are safe, effective, and can save you money. You'll like the sound of that.
Hey, this is Jordan Halls, former Indiana Hoosier. Keep up with Indiana sports on Indiana Sports Beat.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat, coming to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Thursday, joined now by our good friend Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition. Dustin, how are you, sir?
Hey, it's been a hell of a few days, hasn't it? How are you guys?
Man, it's been crazy, and it's still crazy. Just got done talking with our friend Kevin Brockway. The Big Ten football fall sports cancellation. Man, it's not going away, and I understand that people are upset. I'm upset, but we're starting to wonder if this was a knee-jerk reaction by Commissioner Kevin Warren, and we're really starting to see with the Nebraska, they're obviously not happy. Ohio State not happy, although they seem to be towing the line right now. But it seemed like they almost pulled the plug a little too soon on this, Dustin.
Yeah, I mean, when you release a schedule last Wednesday and then you pull the plug on the season, 6 days later, you're going to get some frustration. You're going to get some blowback. I think that a lot of head coaches, players, and athletic directors thought we were going to do everything we possibly could to try to play a college football season, and that includes other fall sports as well. And so the question is, what changed all of a sudden? You had a player movement where they were urging, on social media, the number one trend on Twitter was we want to play. And so you thought that maybe that would have some pull. You had coaches coming out and supporting. You had a lot of Big Ten parents associations coming out and supporting the move to play. So I think the frustration comes in when you have athletic directors, coaches, and players who are a little bit closer to this situation than college presidents and even the Big Ten commissioner, just nixing the whole thing when you had extra bye weeks. You had 3 weeks at the end of the season in case you needed to push the start of the season back to September 26th. It just feels like in this situation, the Big Ten threw up the white flag without even giving it a second effort. So, and I think, again, the most frustrating part of this whole thing is the fact that you have college presidents who are hiding underneath their desks, won't reveal their votes, and you've just made a life-changing or career-changing decision for a lot of these players, and you're not willing to stand behind your vote. And I think that's where a lot of frustration comes in right now.
Yeah, and I know that there's serious issues, and you have to take it all serious. But the thing that I think seems to be pushing this is the myocarditis issue, or the heart issue. The Feeney freshman at IU is dealing with that. But that is something that's obviously very serious. But it was there before, and I don't know if it was just a new study they looked at. I don't know what it was, but something changed that. But you've got these other conferences that are going forward, and high schools that are going forward right now. So it makes no sense when only thing that is changing is you're just not playing the game. That doesn't make a lot of sense to many people, including me.
Yeah, and you're still allowed to practice 20 hours per week, and I know that there's going to be limitations on that. This isn't a full padded practice. This is going to be basically walkthrough and training and running through your schemes and your formations and things like that. And then you have the interesting part about this whole thing is 13 of the 14 Big Ten universities, as far as I still know, are welcoming students back on campus sometime in the next few weeks. So what's the difference there? When you're going to have lots of students congregating in classrooms, I know that they have different COVID-19 policies in place, but man, if you're having thousands of students back, that seems way more dangerous, than having a room full of, I don't know what the number is, 100, 115 or so college football players who have been quarantined, who have been in a bubble, more or less, who are taking the proper safety precautions. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You've got to have some consistency here. And, show us the reasons. Again, the fact of the matter is you took this vote and you're not willing to give those reasons. Commissioner Kevin Warren's interview on Big Ten Network was horrendous. He gave zero answers. He dodged everything that was thrown at him. If you're going to make this decision, I'm fine if you make that decision, but have some reasons, have some data, and back it up. I think that's, again, where the frustration comes in is it doesn't seem like there was any information given. These players just had the rug pulled out from underneath of them, and you're not willing to back up and say why you're making this move other than, medical data. Well, show us that data. Give these players a reason, and I think there would be a lot more, still the same disappointment, but a little bit more understanding if you're willing to share your findings with not only the players and coaches, but then the rest of the fans around the Big Ten who are looking for some sort of optimism throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, and we've seen how much these coaches, whether it's Ryan Day or Scott Frost in Nebraska, who they are really fired up. But Jeff Brom just came out with a proposed spring schedule. And I've heard Urban Meyer say that spring football is no chance of happening. We were with Tom Allen on a Zoom call, and he was asked about it, and you could tell he had his reservations about spring football. But I bet you right now, as opposed to no football, they would find a way to make it happen. And Jeff Brom came out with a schedule that is a muted schedule. I can't remember. I think it was a 7-game schedule maybe. But then it also goes into next season, starting a little later in October, with also a schedule similar to this year's. Probably something that's doable, but the talk about not being able to play twice within a calendar year is the big deal. And this separates that as much as it can possibly do, but it's just one of the proposals that I think will come out. But you can see that these coaches are doing whatever they can to try to get this done.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of money, there are a lot of jobs, there are a lot of potential careers at stake here. So I haven't been a big proponent of playing in the spring for the same reasons that, ESPN's Reese Davis and Urban Meyer talked about, and that's just player safety, playing that many games in that period of time. Now, Jeff Brom does offer a nice plan there, and it's a good starting point, right? And even if that's not a perfect plan, at least he came up with something, which is something the Big Ten had 5 months to do and did nothing. So at least he's come up with something to work with, and I think that you can develop a plan here. My biggest question about Brom's plan right now, and again, he did this in 2 or 3 days, he has basically said we'll play a 10-game schedule in the fall, and you're essentially eliminating non-conference games. Well, you have already had a group of 5 opponents who have canceled their fall seasons and their football seasons. So what does that contract look like? I mean, they're going to want that money, and I don't know if the Big Ten some of these programs, excuse me, I know Ohio State and Michigan might be fine, but some of these other programs like Purdue, like Indiana, they may not be able to afford the $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 they owe these schools without playing that game. So that would be my biggest reservation in terms of the scheduling and the financial situation. You can't just dismiss those non-conference games because there's going to be some legal ramifications if you do that. I think maybe there is a way to do this with player safety. I don't know that 8 games in a postseason is the right answer. Maybe something like 6 games or 7 games in a Big Ten championship game would work. But, I mean, at least he came up with a plan, and I think you'll start to see these Big Ten coaches and athletic directors work with more open lines of communication than we saw all fall because, as you saw, there was really no leadership from the Big Ten. No lines of communication, and so at least we have a starting point for spring, and that's better than what we can say really for the past 3 or 4 months.
Absolutely. Dustin, I know you got to run, and we appreciate you stopping by today as always, and look forward to doing it again next week. Hopefully we'll see how the weather is next week. I'm sure it'll change tomorrow.
Yeah, it's always changing. Thanks for having me on, Jim and Todd. You guys have a great day.
Buddy, appreciate you. Dustin Schutte from Saturday Tradition joining us here to talk about the Big Ten and its cancellation of fall sports. And then it makes you wonder, Todd, what other sports would be easy to ramp up in the spring? I mean, I would think soccer and those type of sports would be relatively easy, but you've just got so many logistics. You've got travel. You've got officials. And many officials officiate multiple sports, so they have something to do. That's one of the things I think – if everything was moved to the spring, it would be almost impossible because where the hell are you going to get officials to do all this with high school and college when you double the amount of sports all of a sudden? Hell, they have trouble finding officials now, and you think you're going to double the sports in a time and be fine? It's not possible to do all of it, but
I think that's definitely an issue in youth sports and you know, when you're talking about high schools and youth sports and AAU programs and things like that, that's definitely an issue. College sports, I mean, I don't know that it's an issue. Talk about men's soccer, women's soccer, maybe they overlap. But I mean, there's a few officials that do college football and college basketball, but not very many. I don't know that it would be an issue at the university level. At the youth level, I mean, I know many officials here in the state of Indiana that do, you know, high school football, high school basketball. They do AAU tournaments. It is a full-time job, and they have other jobs too, but it's a second full-time job. So yeah, that would for sure be an issue.
And then you've got the athletes some will take advantage of the eligibility of being able to come back, but many are going to say, yeah, I'm done, or they move on. We talked about this with the spring sport athletes last spring about them possibly moving forward their eligibility, but then you've got incoming freshmen, and now you've got this thing that does not ever stop because there's always going to be a new class. So now all of a sudden you added a 5th class into this deal, and I'm like, how do you ever get that worked out? That would take years to wash through all that, I would think.
You know, when you hear somebody talk about, well, if we eliminated, you know, a certain type of bug or whatever, it would mess up the food chain and all these different things. It's things I don't even understand, but I hear people say it, and I can kind of think about it and wrap my brain around it. I feel the same way when we talk about adding an extra year of eligibility, because it would just kind of mess up it's not the food chain, but it would mess up the recruiting chain, the
recruiting ecosystem. The recruiting ecosystem.
Yeah. That's a big way to look at it.
It is, because it is a constant moving, evolving thing, just like a life. But then you throw something in the middle of it, you just altered the course of that, and it's like it takes a long time to wash through that. So there's parts of it where I can sit there and think to myself, okay, I mean, you know, logistically, I think you could make it work. I think it could work. And then I start thinking, oh, but wait a minute, what about this issue? And then what about the money? And what about, you know, scholarships and all these different things? And I'm just like, at the end of the day, like, I mean, we can sit here and criticize, you know, Kevin Warren. You know, I was truly driving down the road yesterday thinking about it for Scott Dolson. Scott Dolson's been a friend of mine for a long time, and I was thinking about what an unbelievable situation to step into a job. I mean, Kevin Warren's almost same timing as the Big Ten commissioner. I mean, these guys stepped into jobs that are probably lifelong dream jobs
in the most difficult situation that any of us in our lifetimes have ever thought about or dealt with, or definitely not thought about. We obviously didn't think about this. It's just is. I think we can criticize Kevin Warren. I don't like the way they put out the schedule, and then a week later just squashed everything. I don't like. I think that was just ill thought out.
And it seems like they're being disingenuous for their reasons, and that's what is really leaving people upset, and the coaches. And I will say this: I had virtually no confidence in having spring football, but as PO'd as Ryan Day is at Ohio State and Scott Frost at Nebraska, and I know that Michigan people are, and as much money as this means, I would be surprised if they don't have spring football. They are going to play somehow, some way.
It is, but you know what? I said this a couple of weeks ago about Tom Allen. When Tom Allen had that first Zoom call with everybody, and he rah-rahed, and he said, we are planning on starting football on September the 4th. Like, we are going to have that first game. And I said it at the time. He has to say that in order to keep the motivation of his players. I think Ryan Day at Ohio State, I think he has to say, we'll play in the spring. We'll play in the fall. We'll play whenever you want to play. We'll play. Like, we are there to play. You just name the time and we'll be there. Like, they have to say that to keep the motivation of their players. I'm not saying he's being disingenuous in saying that. I do believe he is that way. But I also think there's a part of him that realizes we're not going to play. So why not take the stance of we'll play anybody, anywhere, anytime. I don't care if it's spring, fall, winter, doesn't matter.
Well, I think
as a coach, they have to do that.
If those other conferences, the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC, if they go forward, I think almost undoubtedly they'll have spring football, because that will really leave the Big Ten with egg on their face if they're able to successfully navigate.
Here's my opinion of this. Look, they put the schedule out and then they canceled the season a week later. If the SEC comes up with a great plan, something happens and they say, hey, we are playing, this is it. Would it surprise anybody if the Big Ten comes back out and goes, okay, never mind, we're going to play. We're going to move it back. We're going to start October 10th. We're going to play. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. Nothing they would do right now would really shock you. I'm with you. I think what you said earlier was probably the best way to put it, in that I think they just panicked and jumped the gun. And went from, they were like, oh my gosh, all these issues, cancel it, versus, hey, let's move it back 2 more weeks. This is what they did. This is what the teams did back in April and May, is they kept saying, we're going to move it back 2 weeks. We're moving back 2 more weeks.
They could have let everything proceed forward. We had enough time and said, we're going into a 1 month delay, or whatever the case is.
That's exactly right. Now what I disagree with is they didn't have time based on the schedule they put out for September 3rd. Kickoff of the first Big Ten game? No, they didn't have time for that.
Well, they actually built in
exactly right
with the double buys. They built in a little bit for that. That's why.
I'm saying, like, that's 3 weeks away. Like, they don't have time to put everybody on hold. I do think they should have just pushed everything back a month. Said, move those dates back to October or whatever. Look, I've not been in the meetings to talk about the TV schedules and TV contracts and all that, but I got to believe the TV companies, CBS, ABC, NBC, ESPN, TNT, all of them would be willing to carry these live sporting events no matter when you put it on, because they got nothing else to show right now.
You ain't lying. Hey, tomorrow we'll be talking some IU basketball. We'll talk more up on the search for an assistant coach for Indiana, Archie Miller. That the Griffin name is the only one that's really sticking out right now. And I think that because this was known it was going to happen, it's going to make this an easy deal. I think it was probably done before it got started.
It's one of those things you go back and look at the Justin Smith transfer. From all of our perspective, it kind of happened last minute, and all of a sudden, Thursday he's there and Friday he's gone. But within the team, they knew that well in advance. And I think this is probably another scenario that's probably pretty similar to that. We just learned of this 3 days ago. However, the coaching staff and administration's probably known about this as a possibility for weeks or months.
Absolutely, I agree. Make sure you go to thehoosier.com for complete coverage of Indiana athletics and the Big Ten. Alec Lasley's got some great stories up on following the search for the basketball coach and the recruiting coming up, which we'll talk with him about tomorrow. We'll talk more about Bryce Hopkins. We talked a little bit about that earlier and see how they can try to squeeze those guys in. You got Trey Kaufman and Miller. I don't see him getting all three of those guys, man, but we'll see. We'll talk about all that tomorrow and see how that goes and see what else changes, because I'm sure that overnight things will change again. And we'll talk more about a potential spring football schedule. I really feel more and more confident that that's going to happen with if these other leagues play. There's no doubt that the Big Ten cannot lose out on that money, and these schools cannot lose out on that money. But appreciate everybody joining us. Thanks a lot again to Dustin Schutte and to Kevin Brockway for joining us today. We look forward to doing it all over again tomorrow. Thank you most of all. Wear your mask, do something nice for somebody, and until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.